Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
This is Stress-Free Living. Thank you so much for joining us as we are in our holiday season here, the season of Thanksgiving for all of our Americans. For our Canadian friends, you've already celebrated. I know there's various days around the world that people celebrate Thanksgiving, but today especially, we are in a spirit of gratefulness, especially for you being a part of our program. And it is my first privilege and honor to introduce all of you to my longtime radio colleague, and my dear spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And I don't have to ask you if you're feeling grateful because I know that's just who you are. That's you live in a state of gratefulness, or you try to, right?
The moment you think you are grateful, you are not grateful. Grateful is the unconditional euphoria which happens to you in your when you learn to completely disappear. Whenever you appear, your ego is present.
Wow. Well, we haven't even gotten into the topic of the show yet, but you've given us a new topic already, so we have to go here for a moment. It is it's a purposeful day of Thanksgiving to say I'm thankful, I'm grateful. And it's a purposeful act that we try to learn to say practice gratefulness and live in a state of gratefulness. Now you've taken that to a whole different level when you say that that's your ego if you're being thankful, that you are, it's almost like you've given it a negative connotation, and yet it's done in a spirit of gratefulness. How do I understand this? Do you think we're all being egotistical when we say I'm thankful for my blessings?
Absolutely. Who are you to be thankful?
What's that?
Who are you to be thankful? You know, let me repeat a poetry and translate that into English. We
Okay.
have done that on many shows.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, God sent us in this human uniform, your body. And we mistook this uniform as us. So God is saying that you are not the uniform. You are not young. You are not old. You are not black. You are not white. You are not man, or you are not women. These are all the definitions of our uniform, not you. Only if you can understand, if I reside in you, in this uniform, and that really is basically enlivening you, enlivening this uniform. Without my presence, this would be a dead body. Now, lastly, God asked us this question. Now, my friend, if you understand that you are the uniform and I reside in this uniform, so please explain, where do you exist? Who are you? Because you are not the uniform and you are not the enlivening force, which is enlivening the uniform. So who are you? That is ego. And if that, when we comprehend, we live in this understanding constantly that this uniform is enlivened by this divine force, and my focus remains on this divine force constantly. And in absence of that, this is a dead body. So forever, the feeling of utter gratefulness exists because of the presence of the divine force in this uniform. That is where the true gratefulness comes. And how we practice gratefulness? I'm grateful on the dining table for the food, for the family, for the house, for these things, all these things. So everything is outwardly which is given to me, I'm grateful for. I don't understand gratefulness, right?
Wow. Obviously, these are very deep thoughts. I think sometimes in the show we talk about truth, and what true gratefulness is. And you've moved us to that. You've moved us to ultimate truth of gratefulness is that we don't exist without the divine force. So without that divine power within us. So either we accept that we are that divine power, part of that divine power, and connect with that and live in that state, or we separate ourselves from there and then we're not really appreciating why we should be grateful for being part of that divine force. That's kind of how I'm
There's a minor correction. The,
okay.
the moment you think you are the divine power, it's a mistake. The presence of divine power enlivens this human body. We are simply aware that divine power exists, and we are forever grateful for the divine power to exist in us. The awareness makes us feel grateful.
So and maybe it's an error, and that's fine if it's a mistake I made, but I'm very confused because if we're not, if we're just a uniform, which has no life, and if we're not really here because without the life, there's nothing to our human body. So, and if you just said we're not part of the divine, we're not, that's not who
No,
we
no,
are. We're not
we
part
are
of the
divine power exists in us to enliven us.
right, right, which
This knowledge, this understanding, this feeling gives you amazing gratefulness.
but I acknowledge that the divine gives me life, and the divine is my purpose for is my reason why I'm even here because of that divine force. I get that, but what's left? What are we? Are we nothing then? I mean, are we nothing
Yes,
because
yeah, absolutely.
okay,
That
well,
is a fact.
that answers my question.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's kind of hard to comprehend. I guess that's where the ego comes in. But I mean, to think that I'm nothing because I'm not the human body, I'm not the uniform, and I'm not the divine force. I all this time I thought we were by acknowledging that we're connecting to be a part of the divine. We're not taking credit for that. We're not saying that we are the divine cause of life. You know, that's certainly not, I mean, we're not God. We're not a divine being. But I thought that our connection, our integration with that, in that we're losing ourselves, but we're still a part of that. And this is the first time I think you've been, at least that I've heard it, that I've heard you say that we are also distinct from the divine. We're not the divine either. We're just powered by it. We're like powered, like our car is powered by the motor. by the engine. We're just powered by the divine. But I mean, in that analogy, because you love analogies, a car is still a car. It just can't go anywhere because it doesn't have an engine. But I mean, you're kind of saying our body, our existence isn't there because we're neither, human, or we're not part of the divine either. Am I making sense?
Now, if you take the car without the fuel cannot run.
Right.
But with fuel, car cannot run until the fuel is ignited and converts into energy. So that energy moves the car. Can you see that energy?
No.
So which is the moving car? Is it the gasoline? No. Is it the car? No. Is it the engine? No. It is the energy which you cannot comprehend, which you cannot see.
But
Another
all those
name,
things have to but all those things have to be there. You have to have the engine and the gasoline. You're right. You don't see the fuel. It's invisible. I mean, the fuel becomes energy that's invisible, but you have to have fuel in order to get the energy.
yeah, you can have the fuel and you can have the car, you can have the engine. Somehow, if it is not ignited, it doesn't work. So, engine, this is the same thing. A human being and the power in us, which is ignites us, is basically energy. So, is there a difference between the energy which ignites the car or move the car and the energy which ignites us and move us and make us alive? Energy is energy.
Do you mean that as a metaphor, or do you actually mean it is the same energy?
Yeah, it is the same.
Okay. Boy, this is really weird today. Because I've never thought of the energy of life, the energy of creation, the energy of existence being almost belittled in my brain right now, to say that that's the same energy that powers a car, or that turns the lights on, or runs my furnace. I mean, those are all all those things happen through energy, but I look at that as a very low level comparison to the energy that ignites my life. Am I wrong by that, in saying that that's a different kind of energy? I think of that as a much more special energy than powering up my
It
car.
appears to be special, but ultimately it is car, you add the fuel, but in the human body, we add the fuel, as a food.
Okay, but it is a special energy. It's a more special energy that gives me life.
If
Give
you
me
want to
that.
call it special, you can call it every energy is energy.
Okay. I I prefer to, maybe that's just me, but I prefer to think of that as a more
Coming
special
back to the
energy.
topic,
We
gratitude
haven't even
and,
started today's topic
and
yet.
regrets. Now
Yeah, we haven't introduced that yet. You
there is a
sidetracked me today.
there is a saying that no amount of regret can change the past, and no amount of anxiety can change the future. But any amount of gratitude will change the present.
Okay. We haven't yet exactly introduced the topic today yet, but let's hear that again because that's so powerful. That'll be our launching pad for today's for the real topic of today's show. Would you repeat that again, brother?
No amount of regret can change the past. Past happened.
Right.
There's no power in the world can change that. No amount of anxiety can change the future. But any amount, the smallest amount of gratitude, the true gratitude, will change the present, where things happen.
Who wrote that? Did you write that? Who wrote that?
I came across this, I didn't write that, but
that is one of the most brilliant things I've ever heard in my life. So with that as the launch, let's tell everybody, our audience, what we're going to talk about today. It is it is the season of gratefulness. And we have done shows on gratefulness in the past over the 30 years. And we've done them mostly to try to understand what gratefulness is and to understand it in particular relative to tragedies that happen, how we can be grateful through tragedy. And I look back on some of the shows and I found that we've talked about that after 9/11, and we talked about that after horrific earthquakes kill thousands of people around the world, and we've talked about where famous people have died of cancer at a young age or killed in a car accident, and we bring that home even to our people that we know, maybe us, that has been impacted by a tragedy of nature or a fluke accident or illness or whatever those things are. But always the theme of those has been tragedies that happen to us, and that I've asked and we've talked about how we can be grateful through those tragedies. I wanted to talk today and ask you about the tragedies that happen in life, and tragedies is a big word, it maybe isn't exactly the right word, but bad things that happen that cause us to regret what has happened, and they've been our fault. We regret actions we took or didn't take. We regret things that we thought that we shouldn't have thought about people or about situations that maybe ruined relationships. In all those cases, things that we did that eventually resulted in some kind of a loss, some kind of a separation, some kind of a tragedy because of our mistakes. And one of our great friends here and guest of our Zoom audience is a doctor, and in talking with him, he related, how doctors have to kind of live with that all the time, because even if they're perfect 99.99% of the time, there is a time or two when something happens that maybe they could have done differently, and they now have to have that regret in their life that they didn't make that decision 100% of the time. So that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. How can we be grateful, Ratanjit? And we're going to have to take a break, but we'll start talking about this after the break. How can we be grateful when we know we've made a terrible mistake and we regret it, and we still need to overcome that and live in a state of gratefulness despite that? That's the question I'm going to re-ask on the other side of this break. We're having it's a stress-free living. We're trying to reduce the stress in your life. Sometimes along the way, it even increases it, trying to figure it all out. And that's what's kind of happening to me this morning. Stay with us because we will get to the stress-free part. Thanks for being with us. We'll be back in just a moment. All right. We have such a wonderful group of people today. We're on a quick 90-second break.
Hi,
Welcome,
Ray.
everybody.
We
Hello,
are
Sana.
yeah, hi. I would love to introduce very quickly. Mr.
Yes.
Navjot Singh has joined us from India. He
Thank you so
happens
much.
to,
Welcome,
yeah.
sir. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much, sir. Thank you. It's an
Wonderful
honor, sir.
having you, Navjot. Wonderful. Thank you for being our special guest today.
It's an honor. It's an honor, sir.
We have a celebrity in our audience. He's famous in India.
Nothing
Wow.
like that, sir. You're being so kind. You're being kind, sir. You're being kind.
Well, we only have a few seconds here that are left, but
You have any
you had a
comment or
if you have
question?
a comment, yes, please share if you have anything you'd like me to ask or a comment. If not, you don't have to, but if you have one, you're welcome, or anyone in a few
So we
seconds
were
here.
we were discussing about the energy in the earlier part of our show, where we were comparing the energy of the gasoline to the energy that we have, human beings. I kind of disagree with a little. I agree with Ray on that. Uh, I have a little, difficulty in comprehending how both of the energies could be the same, because I feel the human consciousness and the energy that powers human beings, that separates a little bit from what inanimate things generally are powered through, gasoline or any other sort of electrical energy or mechanical energy. So that part I would like a little bit more clarity on.
Okay. Thank you very much for siding with me. I like you already. And because normally everybody takes Ratanjit's side on these things because he's so smart and wise. But I appreciate that. And I'm going to come back to that at the end. Okay. But I do want to get into the topic here. And Rakesh, welcome. But I don't have a chance to talk with you here because we're about to get started again. We'll come back with everybody as soon as we can.
Thank you.
And stay after the show, please. We'll talk without limits. We are back on Stress Free Living. Ratanjit Sandhi and yours truly, Ray Samich. And again, it's a great moment to tell you that we do these on a Zoom live basis almost every Saturday morning from Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. And if you'd like to be part of our Zoom audience, we'd love to have you be part of this. We can share your comments throughout the show. And then afterwards, we talk with you until everybody is talked out. Sometimes we go quite a while after our program. So please join us. If you'd like to check out that Zoom link, go to our YouTube channel, Stress Free Living Radio on YouTube. And in there is our Zoom link. And you're welcome to join us before we start every show. Eastern time, it's 9 a.m. on every Saturday. Ratanjit, we've had a lot of input here on some of the things we've talked about earlier. We'll try to get back to those if we can, but I want to get to our topic. And I asked you a question just before the break. I'll just paraphrase it one more time. With all the regrets that we all have in life about things we've done or haven't done, they burden us. We feel bad. We can't let those go, especially when they've hurt relationships that are so meaningful to us. How do we overcome those when we know we're the cause, we're the reason for those tragedies to happen? How can we be grateful through our own mistakes?
Basically, when we become the doer, we have the regret. When things happen through us, many of these things, which are amazing things, happen through us. And gosh, I did this, I thought about this, I made this happen. If we are a scientist, you invented something new, you are surprised, you never knew this could be invented. So we take the credit for those things. So when you become absent and the divine force only operates, good things happen. Perfect things happen. When you interfere in that operation, they become mediocre. When you become the sole doer, they become wrong. So when great things happen, we must amazingly become grateful that the divine force came through us and did those. And when bad things happen, instead of having regret, basically understand that I was present, my ego was present. Now, many of our, listeners will not agree with that because this thought process never really amalgamated in them and took hold of them and basically understood by them, because this thought process itself is very deep. It is going to take enormous amount of understanding and soul searching to comprehend this, what I'm saying. It's my example of a great piano player when plays piano at her peak. He is or she is not absent. She is completely become absent. Only music remains. Only energy remains. Only divine force remains. When you are more concerned about maintaining your leadership in that field, and you play these things and technically you play piano, maybe you play technically correct, but it doesn't touch your heart. Your performance becomes less than great, and you become regretful. Gosh, I should have played better. I could have played better. But basically, you have to understand you did not let the divine power completely take over because your ego interfered. As a result, mediocrity happens. Right?
When we are connected, when we realize that we're connected and we have the unlimited powers of the divine force, certainly I think it's easy to comprehend that we are in a state of almost perfection at that point. Because so what's going to happen is infinitely creative, infinitely powerful. And so if we can operate in that mode, it makes sense that our best work is going to come through this vehicle of our human body, because the divine power, the divine force, the divine wisdom, the divine power, everything can come through us and reach others. That's understandable if people have been watching the show, being part of this program for the years. The part that you've just introduced that's different, is to almost say that, as I heard it, when we're in the human mode, not connected, our work will always be inferior. Our output will always be far less than it could be if we were connected. And so, could it be that the regrets that we have for those inferior outcomes are meant to be a sign, are meant to be a message to us that says, hey, Jack, get back into the divine mode. Get back to realizing that you're always going to have regrets. You're always going to make inferior choices if you aren't connected. Am I hearing that? So it doesn't take the blame off of the fact that we made those mistakes. It doesn't leave us blameless, but it does make us understand that we're not going to make good decisions unless we're connected.
Yes, you got it right.
Got that right. So it doesn't make me feel less bad about my regrets, but it does make me understand that that's going to be the way it is, that I am going to make inferior decisions. So I shouldn't be very surprised that I made them and I regret them. And I better just get myself over to the way I should be thinking. I
Whenever
mean,
you
that
regret, it's your ego. your ego regrets, because ego cannot take, I have done this. I'm a gold medalist. I have done this so beautifully. How come I missed this? And
Yeah.
it's your ego.
I'm better than that. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I shouldn't have done.
You
I
know?
should have done it better. It's
Yeah.
me. It's you have to dissolve that me completely. And by dissolving that me completely, the only thing which replaces that me is unconditional gratefulness and acceptance. So until your ego is present, you are going to want to be the best compared to others. When ego is absent and your power is operating, you are motivated to improve your last best. You continuously focus on making your best better. That is the difference.
One of your favorite lines that I listen to and it touches me every time is when you say that your victories are really your failures and your failures are really your victories, because you don't learn anything when you have a victory because you think you're great. It's when you have that failure that you analyze it and think about the mistakes you've made, and that really is a resulting victory because you've improved your life. You've improved something about how you live and how you think. So let's take that and move that to the point of saying, when I have a failure that isn't just a mistake, it's a meaningful, it causes a meaningful tragedy. Okay. It causes a relationship to separate with a spouse or with a brother or with somebody else that's very close to you that now has separated you. Or maybe it even has caused irreparable harm to somebody through life and death, through an accident. The mechanic that didn't fix the car right, and he realizes then that the brakes went out and the man died in the car accident. Or a doctor that analyzed the situation, gave it their best, but they realized that the medication they prescribed actually ended up harming the person. Those types of failures, if you will, in that analogy, that really have terrible consequences. Okay. Do you still stand by the thought that even those failures are really victories? Or are those failures so extreme, causing such harm, that we should regret them? We should, they should affect our humanity for the rest of our life because of the extreme nature of those. I heard earlier what you said about, okay, those are a sign that we're supposed to live in the divine, but we didn't. We made that mistake as a human, and now as a human, don't we have to live with that?
There is, to answer this question indirectly, imagine if you are a musician. To reach that pinnacle, you have to basically learn the technical skills of playing the music or singing the notes and all that. So it's like driving the car. You don't drive right away the car. You have to go through the lesson of driving the car.
Right.
So similarly, when you play music, you have to go through the lesson. You have to train this, get this body out of this game. So when body begins to operate as music, and then you get out of the way and let the divine power enter the music. So when you play music, one is playing the highest order technically. Second is playing the highest order spiritually. The music that touches you is played spiritually, but technically correct. So, so the human body has to be trained to get it out of the game. So it suddenly operates without knowing it is operating. It doesn't interfere. It doesn't become a hurdle. And in order for it to be removed, you have to train itself. So we have to continuously learn and become a student for life so that we are continuously training this human body to perform, and that our spiritual energy can take over. I don't know whether I complicated this understanding or do you
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying?
Every question today seems to be complicating it further, but I get part of that relative to my question, because if you repeat what can you repeat what you just said? Can you repeat it again, or a summary of what you just said? Because I think
Basically,
there is an answer in there.
if you are uh, a great musician, and the greatness of that musician has to have two ingredients. That musician has a skill, and then let these skills operate without his ego interfering it. He or she gets out of the way and let the divine power address that instrument. This human body operates automatically in playing that music. It's like a doctor. So when you have to be trained to become a doctor. Once all the training gets out of the way and his soul is connected to basically curing that patient, the wisdom comes back into that doctor is amazing. If he is driven or she is driven by the motive of making money or becoming famous, their prescription or their treatment or their operation is going to be mediocre. But when they are driven by making a difference and they become absent and only the divinity operates the skills, those things they have learned automatically, not that they have to recall those things, then that's where the miracle happened.
So let's just take a couple of different kind of scenarios. We've talked about a doctor who makes wonderful decisions most of the time, but in an isolated case, they made a mistake. We talk about the mechanic who most of the time fixes things perfectly, but once in a while makes a mistake. The business person who makes good administrative decisions, takes care of people, and takes care of business operations and does everything right, but once in a while makes a mistake. Whatever the scenario is, the husband, the wife, the father, the mother, whatever it is that we can relate to with this kind of analogy, people that are good at something, that are trained in it, it's like the musician, okay, that has been trained at their craft and they can be very good, but sometimes that musician hits the wrong note. Okay. When these things happen and we are that person that knows we're good, and I know I'm talking egotistically, I know to use that phrase, it sounds egotistical, but that's how we operate. We get good at our craft and we operate in that mode, and then we make that mistake. It's that one time that the doctor made the mistake, the mechanic made the mistake, the father made the mistake in talking to his daughter, the businessman made that mistake when he made a bad decision. It's in those cases that I'm trying to isolate that, to say that that's a regret that we've made, that we now have. And sometimes it's a minor thing that you overcome in a minute. Sometimes it causes irreparable harm. And so in those moments of those irreparable harm regrets, all right, I'm trying to understand, Ratanjit, how to cope with that, how to say that was something that I will be able to live with for the rest of my life, with a and I can still be grateful about my existence and about my purpose and about my value that I'm adding to the world. Am I speaking so egotistically about all this that I can never put this into a spiritual context?
All our mistakes are made by I being me, not being the divine force. Once that is understood, all our regrets change to having regret of not operating in oneness mode, in the spiritual mode. Regrets don't come from the mistakes. They come from not being operating in the oneness mode, in the spiritual mode.
Which
And
is a mistake.
which
Right?
so ultimately that is a mistake.
It's the ultimate mistake. Yeah.
We regret about the result of the mistake,
Right.
not the reason for the mistake. The reason for the mistake is that your ego took over and started operating because you had the skills.
Yeah.
The skills don't take you to the ultimate excellence and greatness.
So
And
the ironic part about all those examples I just gave is that that mechanic, that doctor, that parent, the businessman, those people usually are good. Okay. Usually they don't make mistakes. And it's the rarity of that mistake that they made that causes them to regret the most, because it's like we let ourselves down. We know we're better than that. We know we're capable of not making that mistake, and yet we made it. And it's so easy for us to focus then, instead of on the, like I said, the 99 people that we saved, it's that one person we didn't save. The 99 times we did something as good as we could have done it, it's that 1% that we didn't that we regret. You always talk, I love your analogy about, we have a mouthful of teeth, we lose one, and our tongue keeps going to that one lost tooth. It's like we forget we still have a mouthful of teeth. We just concentrate on the one that got away. And we do that same thing with our regrets. We need to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and wrap this up. I think it's making sense to me. I hope it is to you as well. We'll be back in just a moment on Stress Free Living. Welcome, welcome, everybody. So great to see all your faces and have you be a part of this. We've got a short window here if you want to offer a quick thought or a question, and then we can get back on, but we'll talk afterwards.
Quick teasing out of Jewish statements. So I like the statement that you repeated that Ratanjit apparently have made many times, that the success and failure part of it. That successes teach us. I mean, successes don't teach us anything. Failures do. So if we don't own successes and failures in other paradigm that Ratanjit talks about, then what is there to learn and what is there not to learn? Because if they don't belong to us, so I would like to have clarification. Because in one paradigm we're talking about we should learn from our failures. In other paradigm we're talking about, well, these don't really, these are not us.
Good point. Okay. Anybody else? We have another minute, 30 seconds or so. Quick thought or quick question for Ratanjit? If not, we'll be back with you in about 8 minutes. Go ahead, please.
When we talk about the union of man with the divine in the Shankara's philosophy of Vedanta, they talk about Eastern philosophy that man, one who knows the Brahm, which is the supreme, he becomes the Brahm. And when we do that oneness that we talk about, in that context, how do you differentiate our failures and how do we differentiate our failures from our successes? Because they actually belong to the communion with the divine. So that's a little bit of clarity there. Also, we can have a little bit of insights into that as well.
I will try to paraphrase that for you as a quick question. Thank you so much. This is Stress Free Living. We appreciate you being with us today. We appreciate greatly our Zoom guests and invite you to be a part of that for next week's show. Ratanjit, this is such a deep concept here today that we have talked about, and I want to feed back to you a couple of comments from our audience, that our Zoom audience. When you said earlier today that we are making the mistakes in our human mode, and that if we connected to the divine, and if we acknowledge, I'm using some bad words today, if we acknowledge that we're enlivened by the divine, and at that point, having all of those powers enliven us and all those abilities, we will be a lot less likely to make mistakes, perhaps impossible to make mistakes. But in so doing, we're kind of absolving ourselves of the failure. We are saying, well, I wasn't in the divine mode, so that's why I made the mistake. Don't we have to own that mistake? Don't we have to acknowledge that we did make that, and the reason was we weren't in the divine mode, but we still made it. We still have to be responsible for it, and if we're responsible for it, don't we regret it?
Again, we are only facing the results, but not the reason. The only reason that we were not able to perform completely and perfectly is we were not in the divine mode. So the only mistake we made is not being in the divine mode. There's no other mistakes. Others are only consequences.
If that is the case, and I don't mean to say if, because I know your wisdom is correct, but since that is the case, we shouldn't have regrets, right? Because all we need to do is learn from it and get into the divine mode where they're not going to happen. I mean, it does, in a way, kind of absolve ourselves of having a regret for a mistake we made, right?
The question one of our listeners asked is that we learn from our failure, and so the real lesson we learn from our failure is that we are not in the divine mode. So ultimately, when we reach there, that now again, this is a habit. We do not live by our knowledge. lot of these preachers and lot of these people who have read books, they all know what we are enlivened by the divine power, but they do not live in that habit of operating always in that divine mode. So until you have that habit, consistency of living in the divine mode, you will make mistakes. And things can happen which can throw you off of the divine mode. And when you become again operating in the human body mode, you will make the mistake. Although your mind will say, gosh, I was operating in the divine mode, but not really. You were tipped off and you were not operating in the divine mode. Divine mode, basically, the doer becomes the divine force. You don't become the doer, you simply become the observer. And there is no right or wrong at that point. So once you remain in the human body mode, there is right and wrong. Right and
So that
wrong disappear. So you cannot make any mistake or anything you need to regret. All you see is divinity, and you see the positivity in every aspect of life. So you only see the positive portion of consequences. You, you do not see the negativity because you are in the divine mode. And there is no wrong and right at that point, right?
no wrong or right. There just is or isn't, right? You're either in that mode or you're not in that mode.
Yes.
Okay. I think you just answered the second question that was posed here by one of our guests as well. And that is when you become that musician, love the analogy of that. When the musician becomes the music, when the musician is one with the drum, is one with the piano, okay? Are you saying here you just answered that there's no way that there can be a bad note played then? I mean, it's actually impossible to make a mistake if you're truly in that integration.
Yeah, those in that mode, even the mistake becomes a genuine things. Is the mistake becomes, you know, when you become great musician, you bend the rules,
Yeah.
right?
Creativity takes over. Creativity, yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
those mistakes, which you would otherwise call them mistakes, they were bending the rules. But what they were bending the rules by becoming the music, then they sounds great. So
Well,
in that case, no mistakes can be committed.
the really best musicians are the ones that have developed a unique style that nobody ever had before. And whether it's singing or playing or whatever, that style that they brought could have been perceived as a mistake originally. It's like you're not supposed to do that, but they found a way to do something differently that had such beauty to it or poetry to it or whatever it is that became their brand. That's how they became so famous because they brought that unique style to it, which really you could look at it as a mistake. You're right. I mean, it didn't follow the didn't didn't color within the lines, and that's what made them so great. It's this has been so all comprehensive today, and I think because we were going all over, we introduced a lot of different thoughts that we haven't talked about before, and trying to do this in a short window. If you were to try to summarize today's show, Ratanjit, in 1 minute, and in the last minute here, how would you do that?
I would repeat the quote: no amount of regrets can change the past. That's ego. No amount of anxiety can change the future. That's ego and greed. Any amount of gratitude, which is absence of you, will change the present. And life happens in the present mode. So don't waste your time in regrets of past or anxiety about the future. Live in the oneness mode, which puts you in the present. Right.
We'll let that be the final word. It's beautiful, beautiful words they are. Ratanjit, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your love with all of us. Thank you for our wonderful guests here today from all over the world, even India with us today. We're so blessed to have you and thankful. And we're thankful for you being on the other sides of your radio, TV, whatever you're listening to us on, internet, computer. We are blessed by you and grateful for you. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, wow. Now it's your turn, everybody. I've talked plenty. Let's hear from you. Questions, thoughts? Love to see your beautiful faces here. And take it away. Who wants to say something?
We have
Um,
not answered.
How about if I try this time?
Huh?
I said, how about if I try and ask you some clarifications? So when you talk about great musician or gold medalist who have gone through lot of training and has developed almost automatic reflex to not committing mistake. But during that process of their learning, they had to go through a lot of training. And during that time, people do make mistakes. And this is what Ray and we both are trying to ask your help, because nobody gets born and next day they are connecting with the God and making the expertise. Like Lang has worked hours and hours to get the piano perfection before he becomes connected to God and doesn't make mistakes. But during that learning process of years and years, he had, I'm quite sure, made some mistakes, and he regretted it while he was doing show. And that's what we are looking for your help. Because think about it. When you make a mistake, let's say when I make a mistake of anything, either with relationship or professional, I think that if I try to justify that without learning from my mistakes, I think that is ego, because I'm basically saying, oh, I didn't make a mistake, I'm perfect. To me, that is an ego that's talking. But if I learn and make sure that I will never repeat this mistake again, I practice piano, I drive perfection, make sure people are going to make mistakes no matter what. There's no person who will say, I made a perfect driving score from the very first day and never made any mistake. So that's what we are asking you. So in that time when we make mistakes, before we get to a perfection level, first of all, there's no perfection. There's always room to improve. People are going to make mistakes and they should learn from it, not to repeat it. That's what I think Ray and I was thinking, that if to getting to that point, which is never-ending phenomena, how do we keep up? How do we cope up with, like you said, it's a consequence of your mistakes. So don't regret it because you can't change the past. Sure enough, we can't change the past, but we can influence the future by not repeating those mistakes. So help me understand.
Let me take that through.
I mean, hold on a second. Ray, is that what we are talking about today?
Definitely one of my many questions. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So, to understand this thing, we have to get away from the mistake and success and the gold medal and all those things for a minute. The basic purpose of our life is to find that divinity and connect with that and immerse in that. So until that, so there are many ways to get there. There is one of the way is not knowing that we are getting there, is through music or through profession or through this becoming a doctor or becoming a gold medalist. And basically you reach a point that you basically bypass the skill paradigm. You operate beyond skills. And beyond operating beyond skill is you let the divinity within you operate. And that is where the greatness is achieved. But unfortunately, when all these greatness is achieved through being the divine force at that moment, but you are not being aware of that, and until you automatically fall back into the ego mode. Now, what I am saying is that everyone, the greatest player on earth, the greatest artists on earth, greatest doctors on earth, go into the paradigm of operating in the oneness mode without their knowledge. And although they have operated in the oneness mode, they don't remain in the oneness mode because that was not their objective. And nobody taught them that that is the mission of their life. Now, this, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to explain that more clearly. Ray, are you getting my point?
Well, I mean, you made a lot of points today that I think were valuable. And you know, the one most powerful to me was that we should regret that we were not in the divine mode. We shouldn't regret the action that we took in the human mode because it's almost, you know, give a insane analogy. It's almost like if we gave a baby a lighter and they set the house on fire. Okay, what did we expect? We gave a baby who didn't know anything a lighter and they set the house on fire. It's like, okay, that's what you deserve for making that stupid decision to give that baby a lighter. It's like, what did we expect of ourselves? If we're not operating in the divine mode, we're going to make mistakes. And you know, the question that goes with that then is that, should we still regret it? Should we regret that we were in the human mode, and how do we, and that bad things happened and then we have to live with those? I guess the answer is that if we go back to the divine mode that we should be in, we won't regret them anymore because we've elevated ourselves to the reality that we need to live in the divine mode, and anything else we did was just a consequence of not being in there. So it is complicated and it's confusing, but that's what I've picked up, which does make me feel better. It
Now,
does.
the thing is this, that we are never, not never, we are rarely told this paradigm of divine mode and operating in the divine mode.
Right.
So we are basically chasing the gold medals and those things and all, becoming great musician and all that. And in this process, when we reach the pinnacle, we experience that divine mode. But that is a that is a very small flash of presence of divine mode, which we don't remember how this happened. So until you systematically are told or are aware that our purpose is to achieve that unity, unison with the divine force operating within everything within this universe. So then that is when you understand the question asked by our valuable guest, Dr. Sandhu, that the energy between the automobile and energy between us, how can they be same?
Sir, I have an interjection to make. I have a session in another 10 minutes, so
Oh.
could I please take you a leave? I have another session in another 10
Yeah,
minutes
sure,
already
sure.
planned.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much for
yeah.
joining, and we
It
can
was
talk privately and cross
definitely.
that and have more in depth.
But do you have a question before you have to leave? Go ahead. If you
The only question I had this question that generally we attribute material success to people, doing great things in life and working on their craft. But as Sir mentioned, Ratajit Sir mentioned about becoming one with the divine, immersing yourself into that process and becoming the process. Like they say, one who knows the Brahm becomes the Brahm. You become that Brahm, that idea, the supreme idea. But in this material space, when what we see is people achieve different levels of success, and not all of them, as we can see it, have achieved that level of communion with the divine. So how can we explain that? Because the kind of communion with the divine that Sir has been talking about, it might take a lot of practice also, and we see people of different spiritual awakening also doing good in life. Not extremely spiritually awakened people also do good in life. We in the material realm I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the spiritual realm. I'm talking about the material realm. Yeah.
May I? I think I may have a paradigm that I just came upon that may explain this, dual modes of existence, so to speak. So, so most of us don't live in the mode of oneness, and if some of us who do, we do not do that continuously. So we are fluctuating between the mode of oneness and mode of, I would say, non-oneness. So the rules change in these two modes. Our experience has changed in these two modes. See, that is the essence of doing yoga, meditation, because you're trying to bring yourself from most of the time being non oneness mode towards oneness mode. That's the whole process. That's why it takes time to get there. So while you're not in oneness mode, which most of us are not most of the time, then the rules are different and our perceptions are different. The way we learn and adapt are going to be different. So these are two different levels of or consciousness,
Operation,
whatever you
yeah,
want to call it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very
So
much.
thank you so much. Thank you. Good day to everyone. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
please
Good
join
to
us
meet you.
again.
Thank you.
Pleasure
Thank
having
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.
Look at the fireworks for you that An's given you. Wow, beautiful. I've never gotten fireworks.
you. So Rakesh ji has said absolutely correct, because there are moments without knowing, even the criminals operate sometimes in oneness mode, not knowing them. So this is within us, power within us. In absence of, when we lose our self, our ego, this thing takes over. But consciously remaining in the oneness mode is what is the purpose of life. And there are many,
Yes.
many ways to achieve that. Meditation, yogas, and those things are some of those. But the unfortunate part is that whenever you are doing that, your ego says that you are doing better than this guy. This guy doesn't do yoga, so I'm better than him. So you end up doing that thing, translating that again in the ego mode.
Yeah, we fluctuate a lot, between those two modes.
Yeah. So basically, you have to form a habit of remaining in the oneness mode. And again, there are many ways. One of the ways is doing this exercise in the morning of remaining in the oneness mode, which I mentioned many times.
On had his hand up. If you have a comment or a question.
Sure. I just want to share one of the important learnings that I had when I had a personal interaction with Ratanjit ji. As there are different methods, tools to train your mind, in meditation, in yoga, and many other different ways also. But yet the mind is a monkey mind. It keeps moving from one point to another, changes with environment and things like that. One consistent result, like Ratanjit ji mentioned about being in the gratitude mode or the unconditional gratitude mode, starts from the morning time when you look at the mirror. One more point that I think helped me from Ratanjit ji's learning was that every time you see somebody and you're in presence of somebody, try and see the divine force within that person. Now, what that does is that actually parks you in the oneness mode at that point of time. So every time you see anybody, you interact somebody, consciously remind yourself that you're interacting with the divine force. You may disagree with the content, you may disagree with the body language, you may disagree with everything with that person, but yet never forget there lies the divine force within that person. That gives you the incentive to be in the present mode and the oneness mode. This one thing worked in most occasion for me. So I just wanted to share with everybody.
Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful.
That's again, when you do this exercise in the morning, you see in your eyes and you see the divinity in your eyes. And then that becomes a habit. And whenever you see another eye of another human being, you see the divinity present in them. So automatically, your incentive is to serve that power, not to make a point.
Who else have we not heard from today? Rika, any comments? Sandy, Sana, anyone?
Rika is not going to tune us because we talked so nonsense today.
No, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I agree with it fully. I think I have my question is more, I think it's more surface level, maybe. Like what keeps coming to my head is I find myself sometimes like I don't regret the past, but sometimes I do, like in the present, question whether I will regret something in the future if I don't do something now. Like that's something that's the thought that goes through my head often. Like, we have feels like we have sometimes a very busy life. And sometimes I feel like, oh, if I don't go see this person or spend time with my parents while I'm home, or, not take this call and be present with my kids right now, I will regret this in the future. So I don't know if that falls into the quote that you shared about being anxious about the future, but the way I look at it, yeah, I mean, the question that goes through my head often is like, I'm going to regret this later, so you make sure you do this now. But then sometimes I wonder, is that me saying, well, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, so do it today, or is that living in anxiety about the future?
It's almost impossible to operate with the normal paradigm we have in the present. We are always either thinking of past or think of future, although we are in the present. So when you are in the presence of, supposing you are, as Ray is a Catholic, supposing Ray is a devout Catholic and he is in presence of the Pope, and at that point, Can you think of anything else except? So when you are in the presence of the highest power on this earth, present within you, how can you think of anything else but him? So to park yourself in the present is a consequence of focusing on the power in the oneness mode. Any other way, you cannot be in the present.
And Enrique, I think what you described is something very common. I live with that too, but I think that is anxiety. I think anytime you're saying, how will I feel in the future if I didn't do this today, it is anxiety about the future. It's imagining a regret that you might have in the future. And as we all know, you know it, we all know it does no good at all. It doesn't change the future one iota, okay, to have any level of anxiety. If you just make that decision based on the present, like, is this the best? Am I adding the highest value right now to be with them, to do that for my child, or to make this choice? I always told all my kids, with 4 kids growing up at one time, I always said life is choices, because you always have multiple choices. The kids always could choose different things. And I says, life is choices. So live in the moment and add, what you can do. I never used the term add the highest value because I didn't know that yet from Ratanjit, but I was trying to say the same thing. Make your choice for this moment. What's the best way to spend your time? And the anxiety for the future never helps. It just puts us in a potential to, we can never live up to our own expectations if we just live projecting
So
the future.
until you realize the divinity in your presence, you do not have incentive or the wisdom to add the highest value.
Well, that ties into what An just said. If we immediately see that divine in other people, then we're bowing to that divinity. So we are able to make that decision. That was really good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Rick, it was great with you couple being on there like that. Enjoyed seeing you guys together.
Sahil,
Anybody else
heard
have a
from
thought?
Sahil.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Sahil, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
You've been quiet today, Sahil. Been quiet. Share some of your wonderful wisdom with us.
Oh, I think there's been a plethora of wisdom shared by the both of you today, so I have no place to. But I really enjoyed the conversation between the new guest that was here, and especially the quote that Dada had shared today about the anxiety, the regret, and how only gratitude can help us control our presence. So I think I really like that. I'm probably going to use that in my life. Thank you for that.
Good. Thank you.
Well, have a
Dr.
happy
Jack G.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Doctor. Thank you. Anyone else have any other final thoughts or questions?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
If not, for those of you celebrating Thanksgiving next week or this week, I guess.
Anali raised his hand.
Yeah, I think Dr. Ken asked a very beautiful question, I don't know whether that was answered. At least I did not receive the answer for that question. Dr. Ken, did you get the answer for the question that you asked?
Well, basically, they said that during the training process, you are not in oneness mode. That's why you tend to make mistakes. Once you are in oneness mode, there is no mistake versus no mistake. But in reality, the life is very different. You cannot be operating day and night, 24 hours a day, every day in oneness mode. It just doesn't happen all the way. It comes with a lot of practice to achieve that level.
Of course. It has to become a habit.
Right. But still, you keep on learning. I don't know whether any time anybody can be real perfect. That includes even musicians.
Yeah, that is
You
why
have to keep on getting better of the
that's
best.
why you have to be grateful when you are operating in the oneness mode. The gratefulness is associated with with your capacity, your ability, or your choice to operate in oneness mode. So that
Sir,
is where the true gratefulness comes in play.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
You had something to comment. Go ahead.
yes, sir. Sir, in my limited understanding, and what I have learned through Ratanjit ji, and he can correct me immediately if I'm making or stepping in the wrong direction. You know, the definitions of mistakes, regret, and success have been defined in the body mode. They are not the right definitions that we have learned. As a result, when we have a discussion with anybody on success, the success definition of the person who's asking the question and the success that is spoken in the oneness mode, they both are different successes. Okay. And even the mistakes are different, even the regrets are different. So it becomes very difficult with this kind of vocabulary to explain this thought process. So in my limited interactions with Ratanjit ji, what I have understood is the true success is in the union or operating in that particular mode. That is the only success. Or rest is just an experience where you, as a either as a conduit or a catalyst, just experience it. And when you are just a onlooker and you are just looking at it, okay, it's neither your mistake, neither a regret. So you actually then operate from the soul mode, and whatever mistakes do happen because of the body and the mind, which are a limited faculty, which have limited data gathering system. So they are bound to make mistakes. It's like if somebody gives you the best car in the world, but it still will have an expiry date. It will still go wrong somewhere. It'll malfunction somewhere. So that's the process that is going to happen. So this is exactly how I've understood it. You know, if Ratanji wants to make.
I think you're also right. The only thing I'll change in your statement is there is no end process with success. Success is not end. It
Correct.
keeps on, it's a moving target. So I think I can't see a time when you're not going to make any mistakes because it's a moving target, right?
Absolutely. So there is no success technically, or there is no failure technically.
Only true success is being in the oneness mode. Rest is all in the body mode, different definition changes.
Correct.
Success of one person is a failure of other person. Because when you win a gold medalist, there is a person who did not win a gold medal.
Yes.
It's almost like the ultimate success is when you realize that you need to be in that divine mode and you get there.
Yeah.
You know,
That is the ultimate success. That's the only
that's
success.
the yeah.
Not
And then
ultimate.
anything else that happens is just as a result of being in that mode.
So all the other success we call are failures.
Hmm. Yes.
They're all by accident. Right?
No, they're not successes. They're failures.
Well,
We call them
but
successes.
we look at them as successes.
Look at the greatest economy in the world. The most richest nation in the world is the most miserable in the world.
Yeah.
Is that a success or a failure?
So how is a success in a capitalist world seen when you have $36 trillion of debt and your GDP is hardly anything? 25% of the interest payout is your debt in terms of interest payout. How is that a success?
It's not.
No.
It's the ego of the politicians.
Yeah. So somebody who's living in the tribes of Africa, not worried about the currency and enjoying all the nature and being one with the nature, I think he's more successful.
Hey, sweetheart.
Absolutely.
How are you? Doing a show? Video? Okay, baby.
Yeah, anyway, I rest my comments.
Good comments. Very good.
Let's contrast that with one other fact about the richest nation for over 2,000 years, many moons ago, that happened to be Bharat or India, 37% of world's GDP for over 2,000 years. without going out of India to capture anybody or capture somebody's wealth. So there's the two paradigms there that in our human history exist, very, very different paradigms of wealth. So something to ponder over that also.
The moment we call a place India and a place USA, we are not in the oneness mode.
Can you repeat that?
The moment we call India a place India and a place USA, a place UK, we are not in the oneness mode.
That's true. That is true. I agree with that. I was just contrasting the paradigm, not saying that you're absolutely correct. I fully agree with you. But this was a matter of contrasting paradigms, not that India is different and USA is different, and this one earth. Get that? But through that,
there are two greatly enlightened saints were sitting together, and there were no words exchanged between them. They were sitting there for 2 hours. And later on, one of the disciple asked one, "Gosh, what happened? You're not talking." He said, "We had a great conversation." So anytime you utter a word that is wrong, it is, no matter how you describe anything, it is incomplete.
All right, maybe that's the last word here today.
Yeah, if I'm, you are right, or he's right, or that person is right, this is all ego.
With that, we will take it out. We want to thank all of you for your wonderful presence here today and all of your comments and input and wisdom that you've shared with us. And you've inspired us. You always do. And we are grateful for you. And I know, Ratanjit, I guess I'm not supposed to say gratefulness in the human mode, but we are grateful. If in a human mode, we're grateful, and spiritually, we're grateful for you as well.
We are just blissful, not grateful.
We're what?
We are just blissful,